Welcome to Human Monsters. This story takes place in Kidwelly, Wales. One day when Annabel Forrest was a child in Wales, a voice woke her from her sleep. "Come with me." It was her mother. It was still dark. Her mother said, "Come on, get up and come with me." Annabel trailed behind her mother as they walked downstairs to the living room. There she saw a man sitting in an armchair. He said, "Come here." Annabel made her way toward him reluctantly. There was nothing reluctant about the way her mother knelt by the man's side. It was clear she was devoted to him. He was illuminated by flickering candlelight that was almost ceremonial. He had long black hair that flanked his angular cheeks. He had large, square-framed glasses, and when he opened his wide, Jagger-esque mouth, he was found to possess very few teeth. In retrospect, it seemed to Annabel that he may only have possessed one tooth, cutting a classic British dental profile. He said, "Come here, Annabel." She didn't want to. He was creepy and repulsive. A walking, talking, public service announcement against taking candy from strangers. She froze on the spot. She was scared of this man. It's no wonder. This man exuded malevolence. He said, "You know your family has come here to be part of something very special. This here is where your life in the church begins. This is going to be a different path for you now. A different path for you, your mother, and your sister. And it's important that you learn what is expected of you and what you can do to make your path true to thine own will. We in the church will try to help you, to guide you to the right way, but it is your path, and you have to choose carefully." She struggled to focus. She was still sleepy and also distracted by the man's repugnance. He was proselytizing like a standard preacher, and he wasn't finished. The church will guide you to your path, but it is up to you to choose the way to the palace. Only you can find your way to the palace and avoid the eternal pain of the abyss. The church will be your life now, and everyone in the church will be working towards the same end in order to fulfill your path. You must obey the laws of the church and work towards achieving a way into the palace. You have a role now, a chance to be something special, to make something of your life. Annabel nodded off a couple of times, as she had no time for this tripe. He gestured toward her mother, who seemed to have worked out an understanding related to this signal. He moved his other hand toward his crotch. He pulled down the waistband of his tracksuit bottoms. Her mother moved to the area between his legs. Her head began bobbing up and down on his lap. As she did so, the man continued to pontificate. "The gods are watching over you, Annabel. They are watching over all of us all the time." Annabel wanted to turn around, run back to her room, and fall asleep. He said, "Come closer, Annabel." He had his hand outstretched in her direction. She didn't want to go anywhere near him. He said, "You mustn't be frightened, Annabel. The only thing to fear in this world is failing to fulfill your own will and failing to reach the palace. The world is a natural, instinctive place, and we must take our place in it. Every man and every woman is a star. Every number is infinite. There is no difference. Come here. His tone was firm. Something about it suggested that he wasn't taking no for an answer. Annabelle padded inch by inch toward him. If he was on drugs, he was at the peak of his high, for he began proclaiming, the volume in his voice escalating. Come forth, O children of the stars, and take your fill of love. She didn't understand what the fuck he was rambling about, but she was trembling with fear since his voice got sharper and more demanding. He was intimidating her as a means to establish control. Unfortunately, he had smoked enough cigarettes to wind up with rotten breath, but not enough to kill him. He lunged at her legs and wrapped an arm around her knees, pulling her toward him. She lost her balance as a cry burst out of her. The guy's cock must have been poking into her mother's brain, for she seemed to be somehow oblivious to what was going on as she withdrew her sacrament from this creep's testicles. He grinned as he inspected Annabelle's body from top to bottom. He observed as she drew near enough to get a front row seat to the spectacle between his thighs. She had never heard of oral sex before, but there it was, demonstrated in front of her by her mother and the pig. Her mother's eyes were closed, and she appeared to be lost in her own world of pleasure. Annabelle wanted to scream at her to stop, but she didn't have the nerve. All this at 7 years old. The man was studying her reaction with intensity, and it made Annabelle's skin crawl. It seemed to amuse him that she was so uncomfortable about it all. He made it exponentially worse when he said, I'll have you one day, Annabelle. One day, when your periods start, I will have you. After a moment that felt like an eternity, he released her and gestured upward, indicating that she was free to go. That was her introduction to Colin Batley. She struggled to get to sleep that night. Annabelle and her mother had no relationship. Her mother was not loving and seldom attentive. She rarely spoke to Annabelle and held aloof to her most of the time. One night, Annabelle needed desperately to use the bathroom. It was inaccessible at the time because the living room door was locked and one had to enter the living room to gain admittance to the bathroom. Annabelle approached her mother in her bedroom to ask her to unlock the living room door. Despite begging her mother repeatedly to get out of bed and let her into the living room, her mother told her to wait so she could sleep some more. At one point, she just told her to go away. Eventually, Annabelle couldn't hold it in any longer, and she urinated on the floor. She was humiliated. When her mother discovered this, she said, "What the fuck have you done, you stupid girl?" I said, "Wait a minute. Why didn't you just wait before pissing all over my bloody floor?" Annabelle couldn't look her in the eye. She said, "I tried, but it was an emergency." She felt ashamed and began to cry. Her mother felt no sympathy. She said, "It's no good bloody crying now, you stupid little bitch." She jumped out of bed and inspected the pool of cooling urine. She shouted, Look at what you've done. She struck Annabelle on the back of her head. Just look what you've done. She hit Annabelle with so much force, she lurched forward and stepped in the urine, and it splashed upwards onto her leg. Annabelle squatted and shielded her head as her mother kept raining down blows upon her. She pleaded for mercy, shouting, "I couldn't hold it in! I couldn't hold it in!" Annabelle's only positive relations with family were with her father, grandparents, and her aunt. They were affectionate and took her on outings to have fun and spend quality time together, which her mother never did with her. After she, her sister, and her mother moved to Wales, they didn't see or hear from them nearly so often. Annabelle had enjoyed a much better life in London. Her mother seldom cooked or did housework. She appeared to be wrapped around Colin's finger. She lived off social assistance and never took the girls anywhere. They felt lonely and unloved at home. One day, Annabelle was at the end of her rope with this situation and decided to go live with her father. She went downstairs after packing her bags and dressing for the weather. Her mother noticed this and asked her where she was going. Annabelle said, "I'm going to live with my dad." To her surprise, her mother said, "Okay, I'll arrange it." There was no fight. Her mother was entirely reasonable about it. Annabelle took a seat in the living room on the sofa as she awaited her pickup. An hour elapsed, and a man came by. It wasn't her father. It was Colin Batley. He sat beside Annabelle on the sofa. His interplanetary teeth looked even worse in daylight, with the void of space awaiting colonization by tartar plaque and the unfathomable abyss of black hole cavities. He said, "So I've been speaking to your mum. Tell me, why do you want to go and live with your dad?" "I just do. I want to see my dad. I like it in London. I don't like it here." "Well, if you want to go to London, that's fine. That's your choice, and I'll take you there myself right now if you like. We'll go in my car. Today. But it will be horrible living with him. The thing is, your dad won't really look after you properly. Not like your mum. He won't be bothered to take care of you, feed you, and wash your clothes, and take you to school. But, as I said, it's your choice, and if you want, I'll take you there now." Part of this reasoning made sense to her. Her father had been calling less and less often, and the visitations were even more sporadic. He was newly married with a new baby, so he was left with little available time for Annabelle. She did feel somewhat abandoned and neglected. Colin awaited her reply with a stare that could have infused her with a staph infection if she engaged him too closely. He followed up by saying, "Well, do you want me to take you right now to your dad's place?" Something about his question insinuated that this was less of a request for information than an opportunity to prove how absurd her appeal for a new life with her father had been. He said, "Do you want to go?" Annabelle shook her head. "So you are going to stay here?" "Yes, I think I'll stay here." "Good girl. I think you made the right choice." She was deeply upset by this encounter, since she had become brainwashed not only into staying, but into believing her father didn't love her. Annabelle, her mother, and sister moved into a council house next to Colin Batley's family. Other women who were involved in the church lived in the same cul-de-sac. The church's official name was the Church of the BPH. She never found out what BPH stood for. Everybody in the cul-de-sac were members, though there were also members from elsewhere. The members of the church were neighbors, friends, and when it came to Colin Batley's daughter Hope, something like family. He knocked down the fence between his property and Annabelle's, so their families became even more blended. And because Batley was the father of Annabelle's best friend, Hope, he became less of the creepy, dodgy type she met and became part of the scenery as everyday banality set in. The family celebrated holidays together. Colin's favorite was Halloween, which would become ominously relevant as time went on. Batley had all the families install masks and other works of art depicting Egyptian deities on their walls. He explained to Annabelle who each deity was, along with their significance. He taught her about the hieroglyphics on the works, but she wasn't interested in any of it. He went as far as to instruct everyone that they were not to turn their backs to the deities. Colin was the high priest of the cult and the alpha presence. If he wanted a cup of tea, all he had to do was say the word tea, and someone would jump up to make it. He owned 2 Rottweilers, which Annabelle was scared of, as they could be very hostile to anyone outside of Colin's household. Of them, he said to Annabelle, "They are the dogs of hell, Satan's own canines, the devil's dogs. So, do you think I'm the devil, Annabelle?" Her mother spent untold hours with him at his place, while leaving Annabelle with her sister alone. Her mother was infatuated with him, and apparently he could do no wrong in her eyes. She prayed and meditated according to the dictates of the church and did not appreciate being disturbed as she did so. All the women in the church had a tattoo of Ankh, the Egyptian symbol of life. Like with all churches, the church had rules. One rule was that the members were not to socialize with outsiders. This sure made it easier to keep secrets. When Annabelle's grandparents gave her a camera as a present, Colin confiscated it and never gave it back. Annabelle's mother wouldn't allow her parents to spend the night because they weren't members of the church. They were forced to take the train late at night to get back to London, arriving at 2 a.m. Annabelle didn't see them again for a decade. Other church rules included a prohibition on profanity, playing with other children, going into boys' rooms and boys going into girls' rooms, and looking directly into Colin's eyes. Colin backed that last rule up with a warning. "You have to be careful. You don't want to see what's in my eyes. If you stare too much, you'll see into the abyss, a place where there is nothing but suffering, a lifetime of suffering." Though she was frightened by this at first, occasionally she would forget about the rule and look into his eyes. On these occasions, he would say something like, "Getting a good look into the abyss? Can you see the devil in there? He can see you." She once got hit by him with a red slipper on her hands and feet for skipping school to go to a friend's house. She wasn't being punished for cutting class. It was for visiting the home of a non-church member. Colin was mentally unstable. Nobody knew when he would strike out next. Sometimes he would only threaten the children with beatings. He also enjoyed the sadistic pleasure of instilling fear in them. Colin controlled Annabelle's mother's finances. She submitted her social assistance money to him, and he would give her allowances for necessities like gas and groceries. 2 years later, it was July, and in the middle of a heat wave, Annabelle spent the morning with her best friend Hope, jumping up and down on Hope's bouncy castle, and Annabelle became overheated. She went back to her house to lay down on her bed and cool off. After a moment of having reclined on her bed to cool down, she heard a voice in the room. She sat upright and said, "What was that?" The voice said, "I said, what are you doing inside on a day like this?" It was Colin. He sat next to her on the bed. She said, "It's too hot." "Don't you like the bouncy castle?" "Yes, I do." "Well, what's the matter then? Why are you indoors?" "I just don't like to get too hot, that's all. It makes me feel ill." I see." He leaned in so close to her, she could smell the sour stench of his tobacco breath. After staring at her for a moment, he reached out and pushed her down by her shoulders onto the bed. He said, "Yes, it's very hot today, isn't it?" He pinned her down and wedged his body between her legs. She was frightened. He held an arm across her chest to prevent her from wriggling herself free. He pinned her down with so much weight she could scarcely move a muscle. He pushed her shorts and panties off to the side. She looked down and saw that he had his penis over the waistband of his tracksuit bottoms. He pushed her legs to the side as he forced himself inside of her with one thrust. The impact was so painful, she felt like screaming. She described the internal reaction as being comparable to being burned with a red-hot poker. Colin's expression didn't change as he raped her. His breath made Annabelle feel like vomiting. Suddenly, he stopped and rose to a sitting position. He said, in a voice devoid of triumph or pride, "I told you I'd have you." She was in so much pain she could hardly move. He said, "Right, now sort yourself out and go downstairs." With that, he left the room. Annabelle felt she couldn't tell anybody about what he had done because all the members of the church had come to believe he was a god and that anything he did was justifiable and done for a reason. Later that day, after she had gone out to play, she went to the toilet and saw that there was blood in her panties. One night, after Colin dropped off home improvement supplies, he walked up to Annabelle's room and said, "Come out here, would you?" She got out of bed and followed him to the landing, terrified. She was made to watch as he installed wallpaper. He said to her, "You know, the gods are pleased with you, Anna. They talk to me. They tell me things. As the prince priest, I communicate with them directly, and they tell me that you are one of the protected ones. You are special." He looked at her with intent, as if he were making a vital decision. He said, "You know, Anna, It's vital that you exercise nothing but pure will in your life. She said, believing it's something he would want to hear. Yes, I know. He said, will is all that matters, all that matters. Everything else is restriction and will bring nothing but eternal pain, a gateway to the abyss. You hear people talk about sin, about modesty and chastity, about avoiding sin and impurity. Rubbish. It's all rubbish. The idea of sin is restriction, a restriction to the purity of the will. And if you are restricted in your will, then you will never reach the palace. Understand this, Anna. There is nothing called sin in our church. No restrictions. There is nothing but love. Love is the law. Love under will. Sin is a construct of man to inhibit nature, to obstruct the true path. And if you wish to reach the palace and not be sucked into the void of the abyss, an eternity of pain without end, a lifetime of suffering, then you must obey your will and reject the notion of sin. There are 4 gates to the palace, as you well know, and to pass through these gates, you must have risen within the church to a higher realm to become a priestess. And the only way to do this is to exercise your pure will to find your true path. Following the lecture, Colin prompted Annabelle to follow him into her mother's bedroom. After lighting up a cigarette and laying down, Annabelle sat down on the bed, assuming it was expected of her. He said, "How do you feel about what happened yesterday?" She said, "Fine." He said, "Good, good. You are very special to us, very special in the church. I know that the gods have a lot of good hope for you, Anna. We have a lot of hope for you. We believe you are going to do well, that you will rise to become an important member of our church, someone who can lead others, show them the true way to the palace. You have been chosen, and you should feel grateful." He passed his fingers through her hair. "The gods have watched over you because they know you are one of them. They chose this hair, this special red hair for you. They made your eyes look that way, slanted at the corners, just like them. They created you in their image. The goddess Nuit, the goddess of the stars and the sky. She has cast a protective spell over you. She wants you to enter the palace. Love is the law, love under will. You do want to progress in the church, don't you, Anna?" She nodded and said yes. She had been brainwashed to believe everything he said, so she accepted him at his word when he said she was chosen by the gods and was special due to that criterion. He said, "Are you prepared to take the tests to progress along the path towards the palace?" She nodded. He said, "Because this is the only way you will fulfill your path and your true will. This is the only way to prove yourself to the gods, to Horus, Bastet, Anubis, and Nuit, and Isis. To prove you are worthy of the special status they have given you, worthy of entering the palace. Are you prepared to pass the tests to go higher in the church, just as it is written in the book of the law? Do you want to take these tests?" "Yes." "Do you have any questions?" "No." "Good. Now, get undressed. Though she wanted to advance her standing in the church, she did not want to undress in front of a man, let alone the father of her best friend. Nevertheless, she removed her pajama top and bottoms. She reclined on the bed, still wearing her panties. Colin said, "Take them off." She complied, and she dreaded what was coming next. He told her to lie back on the bed. She cringed as he ran his fingers up and down her body. She crossed her arms over her chest. He told her to put her arms down. She put them down by her side. Colin pulled his tracksuit bottoms down to his ankles and wriggled upwards until his hips were aligned with her head. Resigned to the inevitability of what he was about to do, she numbed herself emotionally as her only protection. He pulled her head towards his lap, where his erect penis awaited. He said, "Use your mouth." He put his penis in her mouth. She began to gag. A metallic flavor befouled her oral cavity. She felt it getting bigger and bigger, and harder and harder. He grabbed the back of her head and pushed it against his phallus. He pushed it further toward her throat. He said, "Use your tongue." Given her youth and inexperience, she didn't know what he was talking about. She stopped resisting when she remembered how this was one of the so-called tests she would need to pass. Colin said, "Lay down." He got on top of her and pushed himself into her with even more force than before. It was more painful than the last time he raped her. Colin said, "Try and relax. Enjoy it." She did her best to project a plastic smiley faceplate, but deep down she felt no pleasure whatsoever, and, in fact, he was only compounding the pain she had been feeling since the previous day. He told her once again to enjoy it, with his face against hers, nasal contact nearly imminent. She didn't know how long it lasted, since it felt like an eternity had elapsed. He said to her, "That will do for tonight." He pushed himself off her. He said, "These are the tests you will have to pass to enter the palace. Do you want to do them?" She said nothing. What she really wanted to say was, "No." She wanted to scream it in his ears, to deafen him with that scream. But she knew that she had no choice when it came to these matters, so resignedly she said, "Yes." Caught up in self-righteous delusion, he said, "Good. Well, you passed the test this time. Well done. Every test you take will take you one step further down your path, one step nearer to the palace, and away from the abyss, and away from a world of eternal pain." She nodded as she took all this in. Though she very much wanted to be in the palace with the gods, the pain Colin Batley inflicted on her with his sexual abuse was difficult to ignore and endure. He had more, unfortunately. "I want you to succeed in the church. I want you to do well, and as long as you want the same for yourself, as long as you choose to follow your path, you will achieve astonishing things, Anna. You will become a priestess, a goddess. Like I said, the gods have chosen you. They're watching you all the time. Make sure you follow your path." She didn't feel like a goddess at the time. She felt dirty, ashamed, violated, and cold. She waited to put her clothes back on, assuming she could only do so after Colin gave her permission. He pulled his pants up and said, Okay, you better go and get some sleep now. I've got to put more of the wallpaper up. Subsequent to the previous incident, Colin raped Annabelle over the span of 8 weeks at night. Her mother would be playing video games in another room, and her sister would be asleep. These experiences didn't just take a toll on her body. She changed emotionally. She became more withdrawn and less carefree. She didn't laugh or smile as easily as before, though she would do her utmost to fake it, to avoid scrutiny. Because she wasn't getting enough sleep at night, she developed dark circles around her eyes. Colin did the decorating at a snail's pace, giving him adequate time to rape Annabelle. Child abuse doesn't always occur as a singular incident. Most abusers make it a frequent occurrence and will find a way to normalize it in the victim's mind. Colin Batley raped Annabelle so often, she came to view it as a normal, if unpleasant, part of her life. He no longer restricted it to evenings. It could happen at any time of day and just about every day. The circumstance was irrelevant. He would see her playing with hope, and he would shoot her a laser-eye stare and say something to the effect of, "You, I want a word with you." She always knew it was her cue to follow him to his bedroom for rape. If she was to wait up for him, she would have to wait until as late as 3 a.m. if he didn't feel like coming around until then. That's how much power he had over the members of the church. Annabelle was instructed to tell outsiders that members of the church were Mormons. Though the church shared some lifestyle restrictions with the Mormons, like a ban on alcohol and drugs, the Mormon religion ascribes equality like divinity on chastity. Colin Batley's church chooses to reference this quote from the Book of the Law when it comes to virginity, celibacy, and asexuality in females. Let all chaste women be despised. The Book of the Law was written by a man named Aleister Crowley. He was a British mystic and occultist who enjoyed such wholesome activities as group sex, sadomasochism, drug use, and ancient mysticism. His most famous quote was, "Do what thou wilt." In other words, he urged his followers to indulge themselves. Annabelle had been attending the church's Sunday services for some time. Now and then there was a different service, what was referred to as a Thanksgiving service. It was put together to pay thanks to the gods. Annabelle was made to wear a light blue robe, like the rest of the children. All participants were naked under their robes. A sacrament was served. It consisted of broken pieces of bread soaked in wine. Colin presided over the ceremony, flanked by Annabelle's mother and Colin's wife, Elaine. The air was so hot in the room, and the smoking incense permeated the atmosphere to such an extent that Annabelle struggled to breathe and nearly fainted. She was brought out of the room and placed on a staircase, where she regained her faculties while cooling off. Colin walked up to her afterwards and said, "You were going to faint." He knelt down to her. It appeared that he was unhappy with her. He said, "I saw you rocking back and forth, and your eyes were half closed. I had to take you out of there myself." Feeling truly ashamed, she said, "I'm sorry, Colin." He said, "You've got to be able to deal with the heat. It's no good like this, having to take you out in the middle of the events. It's disruptive to everyone, but especially to yourself. You're going to find it very difficult to progress any further in the church, if you can't get through a Thanksgiving ceremony. This is an important day, and you could have ruined it. Okay, now go and get change. Next time you have to do better. One of the reasons Annabelle became woozy is that she wasn't eating enough. Her mother seldom cooked, leaving Annabelle to either starve or have meals at Hope's house. Hunger became a regular part of her life. At the age of 14, Annabelle had been given countless tests by Colin, and he told her she was about to undergo instruction in the ways of the scarlet woman. A scarlet woman occupies the role of the priest's wife. Their charge was to bring the glory of the stars into the hearts of mankind. Colin told her the gods may have chosen her to bridge the gap between man and woman. Colin indoctrinated into Annabelle the church's belief when it came to family. There is no such thing as mother or father here. We don't have brothers or sisters. We are all stars. We are all one, and we are all none. There is only will, love under will. One day her mother said to her as Annabelle was getting ready for school, "Colin's coming round tonight." Annabelle had been distracted. She said, "What?" "Colin's coming round tonight, after school. He wants to see both of us. Got it?" "Yeah, okay." Before Colin arrived, her mother went upstairs to fetch Annabelle. She gave her a robe to wear. When Annabelle arrived in the living room downstairs, her mother asked her what she was wearing underneath. Annabelle said, "My underwear." Snapping at her, her mother said, "Well, take it off." After removing her undergarments in her bedroom, Annabelle returned to the living room, where her mother was sitting on the sofa smoking cigarettes. Her mother removed the cushions from the sofa and placed them on the floor. Colin reclined on them. Colin said, "Right, well, have you got any questions?" Annabelle just shook her head. She didn't know what was going on. Her mother said, "It's about the 3 ordeals. I know that the first 2 are fire and intellect, but I don't really understand what the third one is." Colin said, "Yes, the highest ordeal. I'm afraid this isn't an area I can discuss openly since it's governed under church secrecy. The first 2 ordeals must be achieved before it's possible to learn the third. One must achieve the higher level of spiritual awareness to make this discovery. Now, requests?" Colin nodded a signal at Annabelle's mother, who dropped her robe on cue to reveal her naked body. This was a strange and uncomfortable experience for Annabelle, since she had never seen her mother in the nude, especially not in a sexual context. She yanked at Colin's tracksuit bottoms, trying to pull them down completely. He resisted this. When she got them down to his ankles, he said, "That'll do." Her mother performed oral sex on Colin in front of Annabelle. Annabelle knew that she would be expected to participate, so she removed her robe and waited. Her mother removed her mouth from his penis long enough to say, "Lick his balls." Annabelle did as instructed, assuming it was the latest so-called ordeal, and indeed, it was an ordeal. Colin pulled her mother on top of him, and Annabelle was ordered to kiss him. Having done so, they stopped. Her mother had been making sounds in response to her arousal. Annabelle was silent throughout. She was dismissed after a half hour. Annabelle felt emotionally numb during these experiences. It was her means of survival. She had no say in the matter. The implication was that threesomes with Colin and her mother would become a fixture of Annabelle's life, and they did, and she was forced to accept them. One night, a couple of months later, Annabelle and her mother were sitting in the living room awaiting Colin's arrival when her mother said, "You're too uptight. Tonight, before he comes round, Colin wants me to give you oral sex." Annabelle hated this idea, though she knew she had no say in the matter. Case in point, her mother told her to lay down on the floor, and her mother performed cunnilingus on her daughter. Annabelle feared that if she had refused, the gods would punish her. She was sickened by the whole thing. Despite Colin's brainwashing, Annabelle still knew that what her mother was doing to her was wrong. Somehow Colin was aware of what Annabelle's mother had done to her, for when he arrived, he made a beeline for Annabelle and said, "Well, Annabelle, did you enjoy that tonight?" Reluctantly, Annabelle said, "Yes." She felt she had to say what he wanted to hear, even when it came to the worst experience of her life, which had just occurred minutes prior to his arrival. Annabelle's mother became pregnant by Colin. Speaking of whom, he bought a mobile home, and he would often send his wife Elaine and his daughter Hope there on weekends. As for the rest of the females, they were forced to abide by a new rule. When Elaine and Hope were absent, they were all to wear skirts, which had to be short. Colin developed a habit of lifting one girl's shirt to expose her breasts. Almost everybody in the room would laugh about it. Annabelle didn't find it amusing because she feared he would do it to her. He had begun having sex with the other girls more often. Though coercion was involved and they were underage, it was fine with Annabelle since he wasn't raping her as often. Soon all the girls were required to apply cosmetics to resemble Egyptian goddesses, hence the Cleopatra look. The rest of the girls had been clamoring and competing for Colin's affection and attention. Not Annabelle. She didn't want to be anywhere near him. Colin had new sexual demands for Annabelle. They were having sex in different positions, and he insisted that they make eye contact. He would get very passionate and engage in deep kissing. The feeling of his tongue in her mouth was nauseating. He would try to pleasure her, but it was all for naught, as she felt nothing. He would bite her with his one surviving tooth. He told her she had to learn to endure pain. He reminded her that to become a scarlet woman meant undergoing the 3 ordeals. The following day at school, she would have to wear a scarf around her neck to conceal the bruises and bite marks he left behind. Colin decided to play the role of matchmaker and set Annabelle up with a boy named Thomas. Though both Thomas and Annabelle were reluctant and shy about it, Colin ordered them to have sex with each other. Thomas was 5 years older. Annabelle didn't want to have sex with him. She didn't want to have sex with anybody. This was one occasion when Annabelle openly defied Colin. She said, "I really don't want to." "No, I want you to do it. You're my special girl, and I want you to do it." She went to Thomas's house that evening and dissociated while he had sex with her. The next morning he tried to kiss her as she left for her home. He had apparently believed what Colin said about them engaging in a relationship as boyfriend and girlfriend. Annabelle was definitely not interested. Annabelle lost her friendship with Hope. Hope was angry that Annabelle's mother was bearing her father's child. This was by no means Annabelle's fault, but she lost her friendship nonetheless, and it hurt. One day, Colin cornered Annabelle in her house. This was soon after Annabelle's sexual encounter with Thomas. Colin said, "So, did you enjoy it?" "Not really. Got a bigger dick than me, has he?" "No." Annabelle really did not want to have this conversation. He said, "Well, how do you fancy going back there tomorrow night?" Annabelle just shrugged. She knew she had no choice, but she wasn't about to give him the satisfaction of a verbal affirmative. That would denote enthusiasm, of which she had none for that interaction. Colin said, "Oh, so you want to have sex with him, do you?" Colin wanted resistance from her so that he could push against it and be reminded that he had power over her. Still, she said, "No, I don't want to have sex with him." He said, "No, you only want to have sex with me, don't you? Well, be a good girl for me now. I want you round to his again tomorrow. Now get upstairs and lie down." Thomas was unaware that his entire relationship with Annabelle was built on a foundation of rape. Meanwhile, she was still being forced into threesomes with Colin and her mother. Annabelle's body was being passed around like a party favor by the kind of people who didn't value consent. Those people comprised the membership of the church. Indeed, it made Annabelle feel like a piece of meat. Thomas always had to get permission from Colin to have sex with Annabelle. That was the only form of consent that existed in their realm. Months after Thomas began raping Annabelle, he decided to put a stop to it. Annabelle never enjoyed the sex, and she was cold toward him. He couldn't take it anymore, and he expressed his dissatisfaction to Colin. One day, Colin visited Annabelle's house and met with her in her room. He said, "What's going on with you?" "What do you mean?" "You're failing me, Anna, and you're failing the church." This frightened her. She was still afraid that she might get swallowed into the so-called abyss. She said, "I don't know what you mean." She truly did not know what he was implying. He said, "I've just had Thomas around my place, and he's not happy. He wants to finish things with you. He says you don't seem to like him very much. You don't talk to him, don't kiss him. I mean, what are you doing around there? You've got to be nicer to him. You've got to act more normally. Be nice, kiss him, talk to him. He thinks you don't care." Annabelle wanted to tell Colin the truth, that she truly didn't care for Thomas and did not want to be in a relationship with him. But she also knew that there was no premium whatsoever placed on what she wanted. Her consent was never sought because it might erect a barrier to what Colin wanted. She whispered, "I'm sorry." He shouted, "Fix it." She said, "I will." He screamed, "Just do it." Annabelle's mother gave birth to a boy and named him Amos, which is Egyptian for Son of God. Within the framework of the church, everybody interpreted this as her mother making it clear that it was Colin's child. This did not go over well with the rest of the congregation. Much jealousy abounded. After having made amends with Hope, Annabelle lost her friendship again because of Colin having a child with Annabelle's mother. Annabelle's mother showered love upon almost constantly. Annabelle had never seen her so affectionate. Meanwhile, she showered no love on Annabelle whatsoever, which left her feeling hurt and rejected. Annabelle had been studying at an aesthetics college and began serving an internship at a beauty parlor. She enjoyed the work and got to keep her tips. She became friendly with her colleagues, though she had to lie to keep her private life secret, which was expected of her by the church. The church had been so effective at convincing her that the outside world wished her nothing but harm, that she was afraid to go out unaccompanied. She spent most of her free time at home babysitting her brother, who came to be known as Moses. She was in her late teens and had never done what typical girls that age do, like going to the mall or movie theater. The church kept her confined within a penal colony. One night, Colin informed Annabelle that he would be dispatching another young man to have sex with her. He said, "Give him oral sex and then normal sex, right?" She nodded. Annabelle was informed that her next boyfriend would be a young man named Pete. Pete was developmentally delayed, with the mentality of a 10-year-old. Annabelle had played with him as a child and enjoyed his company, but now she was in her teens, and having sex with him would have been comparable to engaging in pedophilia. He certainly wasn't capable of giving informed consent. Then again, Colin did not consider anybody's consent except his own to be important. When Pete paid a visit to Annabelle's house, her mother gave her a condom and instructed her to place it on his penis with her mouth. Pete awaited Annabelle in the living room. Her mother walked in and announced that Colin wanted the encounter to be recorded with the camcorder she had in her hand. Annabelle did as she was instructed. She pulled down his jeans and boxers and took his penis in her hand. When he became erect, she put the condom on with her mouth. She removed her pants and underwear and got on top of him. She hated it, and yet she had to take the lead. She grabbed his penis and guided him into her. In the middle of intercourse, he pulled out. He felt disturbed, as if he should be ashamed. He also didn't feel comfortable being recorded. He left thereafter. Annabelle felt sorry for him. It was as if he were being raped too. One night, Annabelle held 24 capsules of paracetamol, a prescription drug that can be fatal when used in excessive doses. Her plan was to kill herself by taking an overdose. The situation she had been living in had become intolerable, and she was desperate to escape. Death would provide that getaway. She was relieved that she never had to have sex with Pete again, but she was still forced into encounters with Thomas, Colin, and her mother. It was too much to bear. Colin became even more demanding in the bedroom. He told her she didn't do enough to please him. The gods were displeased. She wasn't showing enough jealousy. She had to want him entirely in order to become the Scarlet Woman. He would order her to have sex with Thomas and then subject her to rough sex when Colin and Annabelle got together later. Annabelle began showing signs of pregnancy, like morning sickness. After confiding in a coworker that she was having trouble with her period, her colleague got another coworker to drive her to a pharmacy to get a pregnancy test. The results showed that she was definitely with child. She disclosed this information to Colin, feeling that he must have been the father since he wasn't raping her with condoms anymore. He told her he knew it all along, but his initial reaction which was one of shock, belied this claim. He told her that he and the gods felt she should get rid of the fetus. Annabelle was relieved by this. Her adult life was only getting started, and having a child would get in the way of achieving her goals. He insisted on telling her mother, which Annabelle didn't want. When she told her, her mother said, "Yeah, I knew that. I could tell." She was dispassionate and expressed no sympathy whatsoever, no support. She expressed these sentiments in a monotone, as was customary when she spoke to Annabelle. Her mother went on to say, "You want to try keeping your legs crossed a bit more." Not only was this hurtful because of the lack of concern, but Annabelle knew full well that her mother knew Annabelle's child was conceived through rape. She had been a play toy, and her mother could care less. Colin came in that evening around midnight and sat next to Annabelle on the sofa in the living room. She said, "The baby's yours, you know." He said, No, it isn't." "It is. I use a condom with Thomas. It can't be his. Anyway, I want to get rid of it." "Well, that is your will, Annabelle." He grabbed the rope that was tied around her dressing gown. He said, "Now, get undressed and lie down." Colin had changed his tune about the baby Annabelle was carrying. For one night he came around at about 9 p.m. and appeared to be very irate. He said to her, "You have been given a blessing and you want to just get rid of it? Throw it away like some murderer? Yes, a murderer. That's what you will be if you kill this child. If that is what you want, fine. We'll do it tomorrow. But you'll have to live with that decision for your whole life. And who knows how it may affect your path." She began to cry, realizing that no matter what he said about her will, she really had no choice but to take the course of action he preferred and recommended. This elicited no sympathy from Colin. He said, "There's no point getting upset. Just make your choice. If you want to get rid of it, we'll sort it out for you tomorrow. This is your path, Annabelle, your will. And if you choose to go against the God's wishes, then you will have to accept the consequences. Accept your path. You should just know the full implications of your decision in this matter." So what's it to be? Annabelle now felt that her body belonged to Colin and the gods. She was not free to make her own decisions with her body. She would have to have the baby whether she wanted it or not. Colin demanded even more sex than usual, claiming that the baby inside of her was giving him power somehow. Colin brought Annabelle and Thomas together and told Thomas that he was the father of Annabelle's child. Thomas was elated, though he didn't see how it was possible. Colin told him it was the will of the gods. Hope was not happy to hear about Annabelle's pregnancy. She was jealous that she was about to reach that milestone before her. The girls would reconcile later when Hope's brother, Damien, committed suicide by hanging while living in Annabelle's house. He didn't leave a note, so nobody knew what his motive was. They did know that he was Colin's least favorite child. Colin would insult and demean him, often in front of others. Nobody knows if that was related to Damien's decision to end his own life, but Annabelle couldn't help but wonder if there was a connection. Join me for the conclusion of this story in episode 2, coming next week. Thank you for listening to Human Monsters. Bye for now.